And what the heck? We're back with No Direction Beyond, your Starfinder news, reviews, and interviews podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param, and I'm joined today by Alexander Gunas.
The Everyman Gamer?
Jane?
I think? I don't know.
I write Code Switch.
And our special guest today,
A raccoon!
Space raccoon.
Space raccoon. You heard it here first. Starfinder Society will have space raccoons. Thurston Hillman from Paizo.
Hi.
Thirsty.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Indeed.
Thank you for having me.
So, for anybody who's not familiar with you, what do you do, Thirsty?
Oh, what do I do? So my role is I'm the Starfinder Society developer, so I'm responsible for developing, outlining, assigning all of the Starfinder Society scenarios that get published from Paizo. So generally speaking, that involves I will outline a scenario, assign it to an author, that author will write it, they will send it back to me, I will do all the necessary work before it goes to our lovely editorial folks, and then off to layout and all that stuff. I'll do a final check, and then off in the wild it goes.
And how is it usually received in the wild?
So far, pretty good. Like, people seem to enjoy our scenarios, and they get it right off Paizo.com. All those lovely PDF downloads you can get. So you should go there under Organized Play, Starfinder Society.
Yes. Now, it has been no secret, especially here on No Direction Beyond, that we have called Starfinder Society secretly the best part of Starfinder. Something I truly do believe in. You all have been knocking it out of the park with these adventure storylines.
Well, thank you for that. It is a lot of that work comes down to myself, Organized Play developer John Compton, and Organized Play operational side, that's Tanya Woldridge, who comes into our meetings and sometimes corrals us before we go way too far off the deep end with some of our ideas, or encourages us to keep doing some ridiculous stuff. So it's really a team effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ridiculous is apt. We've done everything from attend concerts to mine robberies to game show American Gladiator style competitions to deep space battles, which you would think would be the most interesting part of it, but no, the deep space battles don't live up to the horrible game shows and Japanese pop concerts.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Ooh. All right. Yeah. So that is one of the reasons we brought you on the show. Starfinder Society is finally moving out of its second year of season 1.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or as you all said at the banquet, the second year of year 1.
Yes. Oh boy. I call them seasons.
Mm-hmm.
I will die on that ship holding up a flag as it sinks around.
So, let's start there. Why did season 1 extend for so long?
Okay. So way back when machine, there was this little idea called Starfinder, and this was a book, and it was going to be a thing, and we were going to see how it was going to do. And then, as this book was being worked on, Eric Mona, our publisher, realized, hey, we should probably do some kind of society. And then kind of looked at John and Linda, who were on the Organized Play team at that time, and John and Linda promptly looked like at the nearest window to jump out of in the chance that they would have another Organized Play campaign to handle. And so during the sort of the prep period for this, it was about a year before Starfinder was out, I was approached to maybe hop on board and do some development and help and kind of get Starfinder Society going. So we started off with a pretty solid opening of 4 different scenarios, and then we started off not really knowing how popular Starfinder would be with 1 scenario a month, and that lasted for all of 4 months before I had people emailing me, private messaging me, finding email accounts I didn't even realize existed, and Thurston, when are we getting the second scenario a month? I need to feed my children with the second scenario a month. When will we get this? And this carried on for quite a while until okay, we're doing a second scenario a month. Which worked out because John and I at the time had done like a lot of planning on season 1 and sort of knew what we wanted to look like. But when we realized that we were going to get double the scenarios, it kind of created this awkward situation where we jumped to 2 scenarios a month halfway into the season, and we're like, well, why don't we take this kind of half quarter season we've got and just tag it on to a full year worth of 2 scenarios a month and really give people like a big chunk and a big storyline that they can dive into to figure out what's going on in Starfinder Society. And you kind of saw that in season 1 of Pathfinder Society with 50 plus scenarios. I know I was in like the 50s for that. That was my first product I ever did for Paizo. But yeah, so we decided we were going to do that sort of extra long season. So that's why like season 1 kind of has 2 interactive specials tied to it, and we sort of build 199, the Scoured Stars Invasion, as our like mid-season finale, which has become like a big thing in television lately. So we kind of stole that concept and then built off of it and kept going until we basically got 2 years worth of content for our first year season.
Okay, so for anybody tuning in who aren't familiar with Starfinder Society is an organized play program where you can build a character under a certain predetermined set of rules and show up at any participating table. Why is it important that Starfinder have an organized play program?
So the reason that it's important is it gets people who don't necessarily have like a consistent gaming group in their local area, gives them the opportunity to go and get that gaming group. Because with organized play, you can show up anywhere that supports organized play and sit down at a table, and they will take you as long as they got the room, and you can play in a game, and you can play with all sorts of different people, and you can do this anywhere in the world that supports Starfinder Society. So I know a lot of people who do a lot of traveling, jump from city to city to city, but they're constantly playing, and they get to play with the same character under that sort of shared rule set that we all play under. And there's a bit of bookkeeping that allows people to have that continuity going forward. And it's great because you have people who show up and they play a bit of Starfinder Society, getting these 4-hour long scenarios or so. And then they take that and find the players in their local communities that maybe they really gel with. And then they can take all of those people, selectively cherry pick them, and go and run like an adventure path, which is sort of the, from Paizo's standpoint, that's kind of the ideal for us, is we have those people who are coming in, they're playing our society stuff, then they're getting invested in our setting, they're getting invested with people who also love our setting, and then they can go on to do some of the other products while still, being able to do the society thing weekly. I know as someone who honestly didn't start with organized play, I had a lot of home groups at the time, I found it was really great that I could go down, get to know my local community, and go, oh, I really like this person. I'm going to grab them and like start a home campaign of some adventure path. In that case, it was Shattered Star.
That is exactly how I recruit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's perfect for that. And that's kind of where Starfinder Society really shines. But also we have a lot of groups through Starfinder Society and just organized play in general that have created these, friendships across countries. I mean, for those of you who don't know, I am the Paizo employee who does not work or live in Seattle. I am in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, and everything that I've kind of gained from my, long history of freelancing and then working for Paizo came as a result of meeting people through conventions and organized play. And there's some people I game with maybe once a year at an organized play table. And I know friends who they have groups they game with once or twice a year, and they do it at an org play table at like Gen Con or Origins, or even at local cons. You see it happen a lot. So it's really cool for that.
Now, James and Alex, you guys have a lot more experience with Starfinder Society than I do. What is that experience like for you guys?
So my favorite thing about Starfinder Society is it's very dramatically different tone from what you see in Pathfinder Society. What would you say, James?
Yeah, I would say your variety of experiences is a lot wider, and also the depth of a character gets exposed a little bit more. Like, there's scenarios in Starfinder that include, like, hospital clinics, mental health facilities, like places where if you had a character that had a particular set of skills, you'd probably get to use those skills at least once.
Didn't you get to do that on Mitsuko Hane?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. Pop Idol's pretty easy. Yeah.
Well, I thought there was one where like you had profession therapists. Or
No, my
something and
soldier had that, and she was over leveled for that, so I missed it.
Oh, that's sad. So sad. For me, I just think that so many of the scenarios are just they're bizarre in a way that only a future like game could be. Can you tell us a little bit about how you and John come up with the tone for the adventures, Thirsty?
Yeah, so where this kind of starts off is we have our season pitch, and we have a lovely Excel document that we put together that we call the workspace. And in this workspace, we generally have the scenarios, their tiers, and then we have like different columns. I'm actually pulling one of these up on monitor number 2, so I can tell you. And so these workspaces, when we started off with Starfinder Society, John and I have a lot of organized play background. We also are pretty active on the organized play forum, so we understand how a lot of organized play people think. And so one of the most important things we did when we started with Season 1 was, okay, some of these lovely jackals are going to take every opportunity to min-max their character progression experience. So we need to account for like when people are going to hit certain levels. And so we created what was essentially a pyramid at the time of, okay, and for the first, 3 months, we're only going to have tier 1 4s, and then we're going to throw in our first tier 3 6, and then we're going back to 1 4s for a bit. And that was really where we started. And much like we've done with Season 2, we start off by determining, okay, this is where we're getting our math. Like, what levels do we need to hit? After that, we start filling in some of the other parts. And there's a few mechanical, and it sounds really dry and boring as I explain this, but there's a few mechanical things that we try to hit when we're doing scenarios. So, first off, we look at like what factions are involved. How many faction missions do we want? Do we want this to take place in like the Pact Worlds, the Near Space, or the Vast? And what sort of breakdown do we want for scenarios that are hitting those locations? And then with Starfinder Society, we introduced the system called tags, which allowed us to put something on a scenario that indicated, okay, it has this maybe unique rule set. A good example of that, who knew, in Starfinder there's starships, so we included the Starship tag so that people who saw the scenario could be like, oh man, there's going to be a Starship Combat in here. And we try to like keep a rough number of like, okay, 1 in every 4-ish scenarios should probably have a Starship related thing. And so that's kind of the dry, boring, like build a season mechanics, and then we get into our storylines. And where it started with Season 1 was we started off with like 7 pitches. Which were, okay, we need to plan out the first 7 scenarios or so. And that honestly came from a lot of like going through different like science fiction fantasy tropes. I won't lie, I looked at a lot of TV tropes at the time. I did a lot of like, hey, what's out there that we can touch? One thing that we actually came out as a problem when we were originally doing Starfinder Society stuff, and I remember because I had like a breakdown in a meeting with several other staff members where we were discussing like, okay, and we want to like do this as our pitch for Season 1. Well, no, you can't do that because Star Trek did it. It's like, okay, we want to do this as our pitch. No, sorry, that's kind of like The Expanse. And there was like a moment where all of us in the room, and John and I just kind of looked at each other. It's like, what can we do? Because there are some tropes that kind of have to hit in this setting. And I think once everyone on the team sort of realized the gaming version of Simpsons did it was occurring with everything we wanted to do, we suddenly realized like, no, we can still hit some of these high notes, and that liberated us so much in terms of like, okay, we're gonna have space horror, we're gonna have like, this is the bug hunt, okay, this is like something more traditional out of PFS, like we're taking like the social scenario, okay, this is like one of our first scenarios, Yesteryear's Truth by Jason Keeley is like, this is a Star Trek episode, down to like the decision at the end of it, and that was one of our launch scenarios that incited a lot of people coming up to me and being like, Thirsty, like I said, I'm walking around, like Gen Con, being king of the castle at that point. Thirsty, does the Starfinder Society have a prime directive? And I'm like, sure don't, figure that out, and just kind of would leave what they were doing. And the more we started like embracing that kind of approach, the more we were able to find these ideas. And like we find it with a ton of media, and I am someone who consumes media and video games at a little excessive rate, probably more than I should. But like a good example was recent scenario we just released for season 2, 2-02, Waking the Past by Gloomspire's favorite Tom Phillips. Like, I'm not going to say that scenario was entirely just me having played Resident Evil 2 and being chased by a scary man in a trench coat who you couldn't defeat, and thought, man, what if that like man in a trench coat was a golem made out of nanites and it just chases you mercilessly through an adventure? Bam! There's a pitch, and yeah, we just like we've had all this sorts of fun just with taking these pitches and kind of running with them, really.
Mm-hmm. Now you've had a bit of experience writing Pathfinder Society scenarios, and you've got a good deal of experience for what that experience was like. Is it just me, or does Starfinder seem a bit more wild than what we expect in Pathfinder?
I think that is partly my influence on it, because I have written, like, I've done a few Pathfinder Society scenarios here or there, and I can really tell what I'm not a fan of in that sort of storytelling, and that's not taking anything away from Pathfinder Society. I just think they're two different mediums in what stories they're trying to tell, and I think a lot of where Starfinder can really pull its success from is, hey, we're going to tell stories that are absolutely different and absolutely something you couldn't tell in in Pathfinder, because I think if we had scenarios that you could just retell in Pathfinder, it would lose a lot of its appeal.
Definitely, I agree. And it's also fun because you get to see like the Thurston Hillman evolution if you're going from Pathfinder to Starfinder, because like I recently played Siege of Civility. That's the newer one, right?
Yes.
And that one feels that to me when I played it, that one felt like an evolution on Bid for Alabastine, and I really enjoyed that.
Absolutely. And we tried different things, and I am a big fan of experimentation, especially in a newer campaign like this. I mean, yeah, we could kind of keep hitting the same marks, but I'm a firm believer that we need to push the boundaries. Especially, I will like John has been on the team for a while, Linda's been on the team for a while, Tanya's been working with volunteers for a long time. I will occasionally suggest something, and it will be like, well, we probably can't do that because like we had this bad experience in the way back when machine. I'm like, okay, but I want to try it anyways to see how it plays out now. And yeah, we certainly learn from mistakes, and we take that campaign knowledge. But I think, especially in Starfinder, because it's something so different, you can kind of get away with some other things in that regard. So.
Mm-hmm. I think Siege of Civility is super fun. I love the combat mechanics in that one.
Mm-hmm. And it's doing sort of twists on like standard scenarios that I think are getting people very, very excited. In season 2, especially, we've got some stuff lined up that is just so out there in terms of storytelling that I'm really excited for people to get a hold of.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the whole like meta plot with the like big bad of the first like season and a half, or first big season, has had like a real runaround of like exploration, figuring out, and then finally doing confrontations. And that's been such a like fun process to see from the start to the end. And I feel like I don't get that a lot with Pathfinder, but in Starfinder it's been really evident. Has there been like any direct influence to make sure that is such a present thing in the setting?
Again, that is very much how John and I wanted to tell that season when we started. The way I kind of approach it when I'm talking to someone who maybe isn't super into like Paizo properties or play in general is I generally explain that season 1 of Starfinder Society is like Mass Effect. It's that big epic sci-fi. You've got the big bad, you've got the inciting incident that you've got to go through, and through our 40 plus scenarios of season 1, you're eventually reaching that sort of like climactic, okay, we've brought the team together and we're going to punch the evil bad aliens in the face. And we wanted to tell that story sort of progressively and build it up and get to a point with some good payoff. I mean, the final 2 scenarios of season 1, 138, The Many Minds of Historia by Liz Lydell, and then 139, The Herald's War by Miko Kallio, were sort of these just ridiculously epic scenarios that were payoffs in 2 very different ways. One of them was essentially a payoff for 2 faction leaders that a lot of our fan base have really been interested in and really enjoy and really want to see more stuff with, but also like bringing up some personal development in those faction leaders and bringing some major important storylines that still somehow connect to the rest of the season, and explaining why we've done things like why was it important that we went to like a sugar pop concert, and why was it bringing all that together in a scenario. Whereas 139, The Herald's War, was this, okay, the final mission of, epicness, where I remember writing or doing the dev on it, and Miko did a fantastic job. I mean, he wrote 199, our mid-season finale, so he was sort of the perfect person to lead us into that scenario. Was great because I got to put in all these sidebars that were like, here are like 5 scenarios worth of like callbacks that you can remind your players, like, have they played this scenario, then this happens, or just this thing happens, that then the players get this sense of, wow, I remember that from 30 sessions ago. Even if it wasn't the same character playing it, as a player I have that continuity. And to me that's important, because I think really we're coming into a generation in like the more digital age that people really respect and appreciate continuity, so I'd like to reward that.
Yeah, I actually recently ran that scenario, and my players had a really good time going, "Oh, it's those guys," or "It's from that thing."
Yeah.
Also, big fan of action boosts for big enemies.
Yeah, and so we had all these like these cool moments, and then recently we ran our first run of 200, Fate of the Scoured God at Origins, which will then be running at Gen Con in oh god, way too soon, and like that was really the inciting incident into season 2 for Starfinder Society, and more wrapping up season 1. Like we're sort of switching how we do interactive specials with Starfinder Society, where the X00 is more about wrapping up the last season, because with Pathfinder Society, and John and I have talked about this, John said it on a few interviews already, Pathfinder Society, the problem we had with those interactives was we sure do have a big interactive where the Pathfinders do this thing, and at the end of it, it's kind of like, and this incites a whole new season. Go play that season. Whereas now we're really looking to have the interactives close out the seasons and be that big, everyone's together doing the thing. And it's really shown, especially from the Origins, without any spoilers from the Origins run of it, there were some fantastic moments. Just in terms of interactivity with tables, and there was a point when people were shouting in what I can only describe as a British Commons-esque discussion of things, and it was great.
Do we have a minute to field Thirsty a question from the audience?
Okay. That is a good time to mention that we film live in front of a Twitch audience, and if you have any questions for us throughout the show, we want to hear them! So go ahead and keep asking.
All right, this question, Thirsty, comes from Waffle Unknown. Can we get a train murder mystery scenario, such as Murder on the Absalom Express?
That is a fantastic idea, and I think I think whilst we don't have a like immediate murder mystery on the docket, it's something we are always looking at in terms of, hey, what kind of like traditional story can we do a spin on? And as most people in the office have now found out, there's one thing I despise seeing in turnovers, And that has to do with any scenario we have that was like, okay, you're leaving the Pact Worlds and you're going to blah, blah, blah. Most authors, bless their hearts, they do great jobs on their scenarios, but they'll include like the 5d6 days through the drift goes uneventfully. And that will be like, erase 4 paragraphs of like, I don't know, you meet a ship with some shark people on it who are talking about how awesome it is to be shark people. Hope nothing bad happens to those shark people. Three scenarios later, spoiler alert, something bad happens to those shark people.
Yeah. Poor shark
And
people.
so, like, I think there's a lot of legs on taking that sort of like travel through the drift and just making that a scenario.
I mean, ever since I've heard about the drift, I was like, forget real space. I want to go in this weird multi-dimensional chaos world.
Absolutely.
All right. So that brings us up to a very important topic. Season 2. Kind of the reason we're here. Season 1 has wrapped up. What do people have to look forward to with Season 2?
Oh, Season 2. So, as I said, Season 1 was like the Mass Effect. Season 2 is personal. Season 2, I feel like we're going to make this more really about the player involvement, more about character involvement, and characters and players alike forming opinions of things that are going on. And so, without spoiling anything of 2.0, there's a big interactive special. The interactive special is concluded, and the Starfinder Society, one way or another, returns to Absalom Station. And what they find isn't the hero's welcome that they were expecting. What they find are a lot of media broadcasts going on talking about, wow, these Starfinders sure like put together a paramilitary organization and waged their own war in like a different star system. And wow, I heard that the Jinsels were a peaceful people. And like, why are we invading them? And wow, these Starfinders, like, they sure seem to be embezzling money from like their exploits to go on pop concerts. Is that what their leadership is about? And so the player base kind of comes back to that, and that is what kicks off Season 2, the Year of 1,000 Bytes, which deals a lot with what is the society about and at some of the external views. And there's a lot of things going on in this season, one of which was something we knew from pretty early on in the process that we wanted to do. You're gonna meet a particular NPC. You're gonna meet this NPC starting in 2.0.1, Pact World Warriors by Jenny Jarzewski, and this particular NPC is going to show up a lot. And well, if you're fans of Pathfinder Society, you will all doubtless know the name Grandmaster Torch. Oh, no. And a lot of people have this, like, strong dislike of Grandmaster Torch.
Mm-hmm.
So when I posited some ideas to John on doing, like, okay, I want an NPC, I want to see if we can make Grandmaster Torch levels of emotion in one season. Suffice it to say, this NPC is going to be doing things, and there's going to be a lot of emotion towards this NPC, and finding out this NPC's motivations and how they're involved in everything that's going on. And then that is a big portion of the season, and obviously it ties into some of the sort of like the season logo that we have, which, if you've seen it, it's kind of this green rat that's eating at a nod, like second seeker symbol. And like a green rat has some pretty strong associations with a certain deity, one Lao Shupo. And one of the things that like came from this discussion is, Lao Shupo, grandmother rat, goddess of like a lot of Yosoki and just rats in general, also associated with like thievery and assassination. And one thing that I pitched with using Lao Shupo this season was, what's great about assassination? There's a lot of different ways of assassinating, and character assassination is a great thing. And so when we see what's going on with the society, there's some elements of that I'm sure people will get to have fun with. And so that NPC and the Lao Shupo element is one aspect, and that's sort of our driving meta plot. But there's another aspect that I'm really excited to talk about, and that kind of goes into that second Seekers symbol that's going on there, because at the end of 200, and for those of you who've been following our season 1, we kind of had this situation with like there was a first Seeker who wasn't really a first Seeker because she took over for this first Seeker who got lost in the Scoured Stars, and then spoiler alert, that original first Seeker comes back, so we kind of have 2 of them. And suffice to say, at the end of 200, there's some changes in that, and we're going to be moving towards our 2 first Seekers basically having completed their raison d'etres, and we're going to be looking towards having a new first Seeker. And one of the things we discussed early on, like first meetings between myself, John, like Sutter, and Eric Mona, and like pitching Starfinder Society, was we wanted it to be different. We didn't want like masked people running the society. There's problems with that. Spoiler alert, you should totally play the final 2 scenarios of Pathfinder Society. There's problems with people in masks being in charge, and so we wanted a bit more of a presence from our leader, but we also wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to be one person who was ruling forever, so we created the concept of first Seekers. And one of the things we did over the course of our first 2-year season was, hey, are you someone who's like really helped the second Seekers? If you hit like your ultimate reputation with them, you can send us an email. Tell us about your character. So we got a bunch of those. And we got a good number of those, and I'm pleased to say that from those numbers, one of them is going to be our new first Seeker. And that means that a player character, someone that a player in our community made, will be the new leader of the society. And there is a whole process we are going through to decide that, which is going to start in September, with the as of yet unnamed 2-07, which will introduce, we'll say, in the area of 4 candidates. And along with this scenario's launch, we will be opening a poll. So people will get to play the scenario and then vote for who they want to be the new first Seeker. And this scenario will be heavily inspired by the old First Steps from Pathfinder Society, where you're going to do some missions, like little missions for each one of these, just to get a sense of what these NPCs are about. And you're going to go through. We're going to have this voting open for a good period of time, more than a month. And we're going to let people vote. And then at the end of it, we're going to tabulate those votes. And it's really convenient because by the time we get all those votes is about the time that we have to really start grinding on the outline for Season 3. So we're going to get those votes, find out who our new first Seeker is, and then be able to plot out Season 3. And we're really excited for this because it's going to be something that is entirely player-driven.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
This is insane.
This sounds so cool.
Like,
I'm so excited to see you guys do this.
Like when you all mentioned this at PazoCon, our jaws just hit the floor.
Yeah, it was crazy.
But so you said their character is going to become the first Seeker. Will that player still be involved?
Absolutely. And that raises all sorts of great questions. Like, so if the first Seeker dies in a scenario, what happens? Or something John and I are really, really excited for. If that player shows up to Gen Con, can we drag them from their table to make all the announcements so we don't have to? Because that would be pretty cool. Honestly, it just opens up all of these really neat and interesting venues for us to explore and really make this society feel like a living campaign, which is what it's all about. This is supposed to be a living campaign. I'm looking over in chat, and Kitsune Warlock says, what if the first Seeker gets a point of infamy? I will tell you, at least one of the candidates we went through was sure like, oh, this isn't like a good person. And we're like, we can't, or can we? Who? And you know what? Like, sometimes voting is an interesting thing. You never know who's gonna win until you put it out there, which is why 207 is a really important scenario, because it's going to get across tone for a lot of these people. Which is why I also thought it was important that this was my first Starfinder Society scenario that I'm going to write, to ensure that we don't have people who submit their first seeker candidates and then start haranguing the author because they didn't get hashtag the vision right. You can all send your hate to me for seeker candidates. I'll take it. So yeah, I'll be writing that scenario, and it'll be my first Starfinder Society scenario.
Now, you all have pared it down to 4. I'm just curious, how many people ended up getting that boon and sending in?
I will tell you, it was over 30.
That's pretty good.
That's a lot.
That was... And it was a very interesting meeting going through. Also, we learned a few things, like, man, we should have increased the character limit and given some more guidance on that. At least one person used their entire description to tell us about the drink that they like drinking. Also, spoiler alert for things like that, people. Don't use names from characters that are from other properties. That's a fast DQ. So yes, we're really excited for that, because that's going to that's sort of the second big part of season 2 is really pushing this envelope of getting us towards, the far off mystical season 3, where we're going to do something that's got a lot of like player guidance and agency behind it. And this year really represents us taking the steps to get there and having something else going on along the way, which is going to cause some hiccups in that.
Delightful.
Yeah.
Is there like any consideration for types of scenarios when you are basing an entire like length of storyline around what players will choose, or is it just good timing to make sure you have all your data?
Really, like, since whatever this choice will be in season 3. I mean, we're still finishing outlining season 2. This gives us plenty of time to start thinking of those ideas and sort of pushing. I think it's safe to say for season 3, we're going to use whatever that sort of player push is going to be for that first seeker, but we can always throw in, like we're doing with season 2, a complication that maybe is something we have control over too, just to make it interesting. And we plan on working with whoever the winner is to make sure that there's some vision, but still have that creative control that really makes it so. Yeah, we're not giving you, year of founding Space McDonald's. That won't be what happens. That's kind of been our in-joke in the office of like, and the first seeker who wants to go off and found the Space McDonald's in the past, where we're going to make sure that there's some guidelines for people.
You just disappointed somebody.
At least one person.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. But as far as like season 2 scenarios and sort of our guidelines, one really fun thing about this season was we put a lot of seeds and ideas and random little lore nuggets back in season 1 that we could just mine. And it's been great over the last 2 years to see people coming back with, hey, what about this thing? Are you ever going to do that? And it's like, yes, we are. And there's a lot of stuff in season 2 that we're really looking forward to showcasing with that.
Now, we've got a question from Waffle Unknown again in chat. They're asking, does this mean that the boon for Second Seekers is going to need to be rewritten?
Absolutely not. The interesting thing about the Second Seekers boon that we currently have is that, and we've announced this with some of our blog posts we've done about submitting, is they're still going to be valid. We're just going to be using them for other things now. And I mean, maybe it's going to come up with a stable of other first seeker candidates. Maybe it's a venture captain. Maybe it's an NPC we put in a scenario. That player mine is far away from being tapped dry. We want people to still put into that, but for the first thing we pulled, we wanted it to be something really big and meaningful.
Very cool. So, speaking about things that are big and meaningful, Starfinder Society in season 1 has this really cool enemy, right? It's the big bad guy that we keep talking about. How exactly did you guys come up with? Can I say their name? Is that a spoiler?
Oh yeah, the Jinsels.
Yeah. How did you guys come up with the Jinsels?
See, this was sort of a weird situation because, like, boy, when we started, did we not have the J. Michael Straczynski 5-year plan? We had the all right, you know what would be a great premise for a season? The season that starts with the Gen Con Interactive failing, and all of those tables died. that was how we pitched the first season, and Eric was like, yes, I like this. And then we started a few months after that with the rebuilding, and it showcased why we had this new generation of Starfinders, and it all came together. And then it's like, well, we have our halfway point where we're going back and we're going to rescue the people who've been there. But we realized, okay, if we're going back, we kind of need a threat. And that threat does show up well before 199. It shows up in a scenario where it shows up basically as a Starship Combat, that if you beat it, you have my respect. And that's all you see is you get this weird alien starship. And this, going back to what we discussed earlier about sort of pushing the bounds. In 113, there's a Starship Combat that happens. And this Starship Combat is very much not tied to anything else in the scenario. The starship comes out, you fight it, you probably lose because it's real powerful, but you still survive because of, things in the scenario. And then you sure remember that ship and what it looks like and be terrified about it. And then that was our first encounter with the Jinsels. And I pitched this internally as we're all fans of nerd stuff. I'm like, okay, if you're a fan of Babylon 5, the first time a shadow ship shows up and just royally messes people up, but you know nothing about this species, and they're a mystery for a long time. I wanted to do that, and it was a bit of an internal debate on, do we really want to have a throwaway encounter? But the payoff later on for players, I still have them come up to me and be like, that was so cool because we saw them X scenarios early, and we didn't know what they're about, but now we do. And the Jinsels were very much that kind of threat that we wanted to have. And really, once the first mid-season event happened, they became our big focus and our big bad. And I was also very vehement of, this is an enemy we can feel good about punching in the face. There's no redeeming these people. There's no even the one time you get to talk to one of their NPCs who isn't trying to immediately murder you, this NPC is not a good person. We want there to be threats that the players feel okay repeatedly murdering in a special. So that really was what went into crafting the Jinsels. And one of the most interesting side effects of the whole Scoured Stars storyline was, and season 1 in general, was it led to something we haven't really seen in the Pathfinder side, which is the main continuity, and by that I mean our print products, picking up stuff from Starfinder Society and bringing it into the game. You're going to see that in Alien Archive 3. There are 3 unique things in that book that came from Starfinder Society.
Mm-hmm.
And Jinsels are one of them.
Tell us about the other one that got announced at PaizoCon that everybody loves.
Oh, Morlamaz.
Yes.
Psychedelic walrus people.
So Starfinder Society has been really, really free with some of the crazy alien species concepts. And you all have been letting people play them.
Correct.
How Space Walrus?
So this was something of a spiraling out of control. So I had this we have our like manatee like pulling out balls of words that we need to use to make a scenario. So in this case, we have underwater Zonkathon, and it's like, okay, sweet, like we can make a scenario with this, but we needed to have like some like native life forms. We give this to Kate Baker, and God bless Kate Baker, she is a trooper. She comes back like in her like milestone of like, can they be like psychedelic colored walrus people? And I'm like, yes, they can. Because who would ever think that psychedelic walrus people would like be associated with Zonkathon, which is like part of like what makes that scenario very memorable, because you suddenly see these walrus people and then they're worshiping the Hellraiser deity. What is going on? And then at the end of it, it was also a new experiment where we did something that had never been done in PFS before, which was, and at the end of it, did you make good relations? Heck yeah! You can totally like get a space walrus boon. And I'm gonna say that that's not like a spoiler, because there's enough of them going around in Starfinder society at this point. I'm not dumb. I know our players talk about this stuff. That yeah, like you somehow after the space walrus scenario, everyone had space walrus players. Who knew? The number of minis I've seen in art of like, oh look, this space walrus is a Hell Knight. Look, this space walrus has a Doshko that I have no idea how they draw it. Sure, cool. And so we like the Morlamaz came from that, and this leads to like a lovely internal story which has evolved over the years, which was we had this scenario, Morlamaz super popular. Shortly after, Rob McCreary, our creative director, great guy, good friend, comes up and he's like, okay, Thirsty, like, I feel like anytime we add a new species to the game in Starfinder Society, you need to tell me a bit more about them, because I would not have gone this direction. I'm like, okay, point taken, Rob. Absolutely. So that happened last year's PaizoCon. Then Gen Con a few months later rolls around, and Rob and I are talking. He's like, yeah, we're in the process of looking at Alien Archive 3, and we're going to put Morlamaz in it. And I'm like, oh, really, Rob? and I'm kind of like, you know, have my mwahaha moment. And then cut to PaizoCon this year, and prior to this year's PaizoCon, I went to the office for like a week before the convention to do some work and hang out with my coworkers who I don't see that much in the flesh space. Mm-hmm. And Rob comes over and he's like, Thirsty, I need your opinion. I'm doing the banquet presentation notes, and I really think that one of the Alien Archive 3 species that we show should be one of the Starfinder Society scenario species. And we have Ginsels, we have Redacted, and we have Morlamaz. I'm a Morlamaz. He's like, yeah, I was really thinking Morlamaz too. And I'm like, oh, really, Rob? You were really thinking Morlamaz? And he's like, yeah, okay. And then he went off and we got Morlamaz. But it's been kind of this funny joke. Rob is often a very serious fellow, and rightfully so, like, is a good custodian of Starfinder. But sometimes I maybe try to push some things past that envelope, and you know, hey, I think it works out for everyone, especially all of you space walrus people out there.
That reminds me of my food story with Rob. I totally can see that. That's great.
Yeah, no. Morlamaz are one of those like cool things that we tried and is new, and with Alien Archive 3, I'm very excited of what we're gonna see from that in terms of like, hey, here's some new stuff for the society.
Yeah. Speaking of the society starters, you all made a slight change this year, and you didn't kick off the society at Gen Con. You kicked off at Origins.
Yeah, we did it last year too.
Why
Kind of. We didn't
Origins?
have like the other season, but yes, we did. Origins has traditionally been our launch for Starfinder, and that is to mostly keep me sane. Because spoiler alert, having like the team trying to deliver everything at once at Gen Con, including when that's our big release period and we've got all this other stuff going on, it is a nightmare. So we pushed back to Origins. Now, last year was a bit of a situation because we also decided to release the August scenarios early at Gen Con for Starfinder. And so to give you some indication of how this worked out, we had May, which was PaizoCon, have to get those scenarios out early to GMs. Then we had June, which is Origins, had to get those scenarios out early to GMs. Then we had June, August, which is because Gen Con's timing is so early. It's basically those 4 scenarios have to be done like mid-June to get to the Gen Con GMs. So this year we've changed that up a bit again for mostly my sanity. And our August scenarios will actually be releasing at the end of August, which means our Gen Con Starfinder release won't be anything new. Like it won't be any pre-releases, I should say. The July scenarios at that point will still be very new. And will be very exciting. I will. Do we want spoilers for scenarios? Is that where we're at now? I don't know. Ghosts, direct me.
Well, maybe spoil at least a couple of tidbits to get people interested in what
Yeah, don't
societies
spoil the
they
whole
should
thing.
play at Gen Con.
James and I still got to play this. Don't
Yeah.
spoil all of it.
Well, okay. When I say spoilers, can I say let me spoil like the high-end pitch for the product page?
Yeah, that sounds
Spoil
fair.
that.
Yeah.
All right. So starting in July, we have 203, the Withering World, which is a new quest pack that we're doing, a Tier 1-4 with 5 quests, with basically all new authors for us. So, as I madly pull up the names because I can't remember. Oh, sorry, not all new. But we have Ark Riley, Jessica Catalan, Jennifer Povey, Sharina Sharani, and Rigby Bendel are all doing quests for that quest pack. It is a 5 adventure quest pack, which is going to be more introductory content for players, and something that I think there'll be a lot of help for local groups, especially with that sort of 5 quest feel to it, as opposed to the 4 we've done in the past. And it deals with finding a planet that is locked between its sun and a black hole.
That's pretty
And
cool.
Involves, a certain cult of a certain devourer. And really goes into like some fun quests about that, and gets us one of our Alien Archive 2 species that we have that we're going to see them in a different light. So super fun there. Cool. But again, more introductory. So if you're someone who's interested, that'll be something you can try out at Gen Con. Then 204, which is Futures Fall, which is a 7 to 10, tier 7 to 10. It's a high-level scenario that brings us back to everyone's favorite space mega dungeon, Salvation's End. For those of you who aren't familiar, Salvation's End is sort of this space mega dungeon we've been building up since the start of the campaign, which has been our excuse to include like these vaults that have different things happening in them. So our first vault was something of a look in like the past, something from old Galarian. Our second vault was a social experiment of what happens when you put Knowles Yetis and a unicorn all together in a swamp. And I'm excited to say Futures Fall, written by Matt Duvall, a longtime veteran author or freelancer for us. Futures Fall talks about a theoretical future, which sure has some of the most ridiculous stuff I've seen in turnover in like the most delightful way. If you follow my Twitter, you may have noticed me talking about like Vescarium Saturday morning cartoons, and that sure does fit into this scenario.
Oh,
And so that's like something that's pushing that plot along, but also kind of is something just out of the box and like, hey, here's this totally weird situation we're going to get people involved in. Then in August, we're going to have, again at the end of the month, not pre-released at Gen Con this year, sadly, but for those of you who get through all of our content, you still have something to look forward to at the end of August. 205, the Meeting of Queens, which takes us to the colonies on the planet of Castrovel and deals a lot with Formian culture. And I will say that the term that got like thrown around a lot is what happens if the Starfinder Society was tasked with being in a historical reenactment. And we're going to see some of that. That then brings us to 208, which is... Oh, sorry, 206. My apologies. 206, which is kind of a big one. I'm going to say the name because I've finally like beat John down enough that he's going to let me have this name. 206 is the first of our first two-part that we've ever done in Starfinder Society. And it is entitled The Stumbling Society, Part 1. Sangoro's Lament, which takes us to this place that a lot of people, especially Exo-Guardians out there, have been asking for, their old headquarters of Sangoro's Bulwark. And turns out that the Exo-Guardians are a faction that in the description, in the guide, sure are a faction that are like, and these are the people who go out and they fight the evil things out in there, and they get weapons, and they bring them back, and they sure keep those weapons to fight the bad things out there. Why do they keep going to, like, pop concerts, and why are we following, like, our faction leader who seems enamored with this android? What is... Following up on some of that, we're going back into what the Extra Guardians are about, which is, hey, our old headquarters sure had the equivalent of a bunch of nukes in it, and maybe we should get those back. But because of what's going on with Season 2, maybe we shouldn't launch a full-scale paramilitary operation because that will feed into the mainstream media's opinion of us right now. So we're going to send a team to go secure this.
I still don't understand what the problem is of a bunch of hobbyists having access to a paramilitary organization armed with world-ending capabilities.
Exactly. I don't know either. But apparently the Pact Worlds is asking questions now. And so Sangoro's Bulwark is going to get a bit of a description in there. And we're going to see some stuff going on and go and try to find our guns. And suffice it to say, whatever happens during that is going to bring us into the second part, which will be 208 in September, tentatively entitled Sangoro's Gifts. And we'll sure be a Wayfinder's mission for what that means. We're gonna be looking at those. Those are both going to be tier 5-8. So kind of in that higher mid-range for players. We're really excited to get our first two-parter out there. Again, it's going to also be somewhat meta plot intensive, not intensive, but bring that meta plot forward. And yeah, that's kind of our media. And as I mentioned, 207, which has no name at this point, is going to involve our first seeker candidates. And sort of like the 10,000-mile overview for what's coming after. We just have a lot of high points that we want to hit. There's certainly a lot of fan favorite species that people have been like, hey, can we go back and see them? We're totally going to go back and see them. We're totally going to be dealing with some meta plot stuff. A story arc that has kind of taken on a life of its own, and we're going to be exploring a bit more this season, is something that we in the office, and this comes from my Wednesday live Twitch game on official Paizo from our producer BB Wolf. Her Punch and Light game coined a term that we've now taken and adopted internally called Big Potion, and we're gonna be tackling some Big Potion stuff this season too. And yeah. That's just kind of some of the stuff we have to look forward to in the coming months.
All right.
I'm
Sounds
so
like it's
excited
gonna
that
be a
you're.
great time.
I'm very excited that you're taking on the idea that like somehow the Starfinder Society has powers outside of an organization like they should, because that is literally what I rail against every time, and I've almost forced all of my local like area to get non-lethal augments to their weapons, so we just don't kill random people because we're not the cops. Like it's been weighing heavy on my soul.
And you know what? Like it came from PFS experience, because it sure is awful convenient that every year we basically put together an army and go kick in a door somewhere. People should be asking questions about this, and season 2, they're starting to ask some questions about this.
I love it. I love it so much.
It's glad it took like some odd 1,000 years and a gap in order for the questions to be asked.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, there's a point where Absalom is under assault, and they just go, "Well, we're the police, but not the police. Pathfinders deal with that." Like,
Hey, we're the police.
we are supposed to be looking at runes. We are supposed to be taking rubbings off of a wall, not this. Yeah. So season 2 is certainly addressing that.
All right. So we have come up on time. This has been one of my favorite episodes all year, actually. So thank you so much, Thirsty,
Hooray!
for joining us. Now, you mentioned conventions. Where can people expect to see you this year? Are you going to be at Gen Con?
I will be at Gen Con. I will actually, as of now, January, I am now an official Paizo employee and not a contractor. So you'll even see me in a blue Paizo shirt at Gen Con, which will be weird and different for me. But yeah, you'll see me. I will actually this year be spending most of my time in the Sagamore Ballroom, sort of helping out Tanya so that she's not the only person in a blue shirt who is scheduled to be in that room. So I kind of said, hey, if you need help, that's where I've spent the last 8 Gen Cons. So please come say hi to me if you're going to be at Gen Con. I'll be in the SAG pretty much all week, or well, however long the con is. It all blurs. I'm there for basically a week.
I'm there for my life.
Yeah. And so that'll be Gen Con. After that, in September, end of September, I'll be in SkullCon in the Twin Cities, which this is my shameless plug for SkullCon. If you've never been, it is an amazing convention that is a charity-run event. That all goes towards Tubman. And one of the excellent things about SkullCon that was super cool to see last year was we had 10 of the first 100 coin campaign coin recipients at the convention in a con in the Twin Cities, and people came out for it. It is amazing. It is also a place where I will be running 2-98 into the Perplexity Part 2, so one of the few places people can get to have a chance to play that.
Wonderful. Now, will you be spending any time in our room at Gen Con, the seminar room?
To be determined. I don't know what that schedule is quite looking like yet.
Oh.
I might come in and heckle you. I mean,
wonderful.
Yeah, please come.
Yep,
yeah,
please.
absolutely.
All right. So that is going to be the end of the episode. Any final shout outs to give? Anything you want to shout out to or promote? Anybody? All blank stares.
I've given all my promotions.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. One thing that I will promote, because I'm shameless.
Do it.
Shameless.
Okay.
Okay, 3 things I'm going to promote in real fast
Wonderful.
session. Pew pew pew. First of all, I'm going to suggest that with Pathfinder First Edition wrapping up, there's a few products you should probably be looking at picking up. First of all, the last campaign setting for Pathfinder First Edition, Druma, Prophet and Prophecy, which if you haven't seen, sure has this adorable alpaca. Totally not an alpaca on the cover art. And I wrote that with John Compton. Funny story, the alpaca on the cover art was not my idea. John put it there. Spoiler alert number 2. Same with the total alpaca-like animal companion that shows up in the book. Also, the final Tyrant's Grasp adventure path, 149, I believe. There is a developer grab bag of articles in the back of that product. I don't know if it's been announced yet, but I'm totally going to say it. I got to do an article, and all I'll say is that the article is entitled Shax's House of Pain.
Wait, oh, we did it.
You should look at that. Yeah.
So when Ron said anybody could do whatever they wanted, like
I will tell you that it was a bit of a fight to get that in, but I stuck to my guns and it happened. And like final awful shout out that I have to do. Pathfinder Society scenario number 10-23, Passing the Torch Part 2, Who Speaks for the 10, written by myself and John Compton, as the final Pathfinder Society first edition scenario.
That's fun.
And let me tell you that when PCs are capable of like I cast Wish, we got some sidebars that talk about stuff. And just gonna say that's kind of the end of season, or like PF1's organized play scenarios, and it's real humbling to work on that one. Okay, that's my shameless plugs for everything.
I remembered something that we all have to shout out to.
What's that?
It's Stellar. We can't not shout
out. Oh, yes, Stellar! We are doing an actual play podcast with Starfinder, which has a wonderful cast of everybody you see on screen except Thirsty.
Thirsty.
Sorry.
Thirsty's got his own really cool one, Punch and Crawl. It's on Wednesdays. It happens during our show, so watch his.
I know. That's why I wasn't saying anything. But you should totally come and watch Punch and Crawl too. Just watch it like after No Direction if you're a fan of No Direction, or watch No Direction after. We can share.
Right. This isn't like
record.
The internet is like totally time shifting. You can watch our stuff. Honestly, only like 0.001% of our audience watches live. Live. Yeah, it's like the vast majority of our audience listens to our audio releases when they come out on Fridays. Yeah. But check out Punch and Crawl. It's a blast. And check out Stellar, which is going to be launching on... Well, actually, it launched. Issue 1 was on Monday, so go check that out. It's got a cast of myself. I'm playing Enoch, the uplifted bear technomancer. Alex, who's playing Zibby. James.
I am a biohacker skittermander. It's great.
James, tell us about your character.
Oh, yeah, I play Cliff. I'm a mechanic, and there's no reason why we don't have any bananas.
Indeed. And then we have Lauren and Amanda Hammond, who is one of the Starfinder crew herself, who is playing the Rage Bug.
Yes. Ira the Irritable.
She's awesome. And I'm not just saying that because she's technically my boss. She's awesome.
She's
fantastic.
We love her. And the entire cast has a southern accent.
Which
is wonderful.
Yeah. Well, no, it's because Common isn't my first language. Clearly in our version of the Starfinder universe, like, Common is just like southern. And Shivi doesn't have that. He's from the Veskarium.
Well, the Veskarium has 3 languages. It has Northern, Southern, and Equatorial, and they're all very distinct accents.
And with that, we're going to have to, of course, say goodbye. But before we go, we want to say thank you to our viewers and listeners who have come in. We also want to say very much thank you to our patrons. Our patrons who support us on Patreon are the only reason that shows like this get to be possible. You have really helped out with the network, helped us up our game, get technology, get equipment, pay for the really expensive website. Because there's so many more of you, our bandwidth costs keep shooting through the roof every year. And it's only through your support that we're able to even keep the lights on. We appreciate it. If you wish to support this show and help us continue to produce content just like this, to produce things like Stellar and Adventurous, or to produce things like our live streaming of Paizo seminars during the major conventions, you can do so by going to nodirectionpodcast.com and clicking on the Patreon link there, or go to patreon.com/nodirection. We appreciate every inch of support that you all can give. And with that, I'm going to say, go beyond with No Direction.